Hello everyone, my name is Mariella and I am a nurse with Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Today I am here to talk to you a little bit about diabetes. Unfortunately, teaching still looks a little bit differently with COVID and we've had to do a slideshow, but I hope you learned something from this, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by talking a little bit about what is diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic condition. That means it's a lifelong condition that affects how your body turns food into energy. What does that mean? It means that your body is unable to make insulin, or it is making insulin and it can't use that insulin properly. 34.2 million US adults are currently diabetic. That's roughly 10.5% of the entire US population. In the last 20 years, adults that have been diagnosed with diabetes has doubled in the United States. One out of every 5 people are unaware that they even have diabetes. There are 2 different types of diabetics. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune, which is typically a genetic disorder that shows up early in life. And type 2 diabetes, which is the focus of this presentation. It's typically diet and exercise related. It's a lifestyle relation and develops over time. 90 to 95% of diabetics are type 2 diabetics. $88 million adults are pre-diabetic. Over 84% of those adults are completely unaware of this. Diabetes is diagnosed via a simple blood test. They check your A1C. A normal A1C is about 5.7%. Pre-diabetics are typically in that 6 to 6.1% range. And once you get over 6.7%, we've considered you a full-on diabetic. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. Many people look at that and they're like, oh, well, it's only 7. There's 7 other things that are ahead of diabetes, which is true. However, diabetes is the only preventable disease on this list. It falls behind things such as heart disease, cancer, accidents, chronic respiratory conditions, stroke, and Alzheimer's. It's the #1 cause of kidney failure and lower limb amputation. Okay, let's take a look at some risk factors. Having prediabetes. Being pre-diabetic, of course, will eventually lead to diabetes if you don't take charge and make some drastic changes in your life to your meal planning and exercise routine. Being overweight or having a sedentary lifestyle. The more fatty tissues you have, the more resistant your cells become to insulin. Being over the age of 45. While more and more adolescents and young adults are getting diagnosed with type 2 diabetes due to unhealthy lifestyles, being over 45 is still a big risk factor. As we age, our bodies tend to slow down. We tend to exercise less, lose muscle mass, and eventually this leads to gaining a lot of weight. Not being physically active. Physical activity helps control your weight and uses up glucose as energy. This makes your cells sensitive to insulin and it helps them continue to work properly. Family history. Family history is a big risk factor in diabetes. If a grandparent, parent, or sibling in your family is diabetic, your chances of having diabetes later on in life is significantly increased. Race and ethnicity. Although it's unclear why, African Americans, Hispanics, American Indian, and Alaskan Natives have a much higher chance of being diabetic than those who are white. 12.5% of diabetics are Hispanic. 11.7% are non-Hispanic blacks, and 14.7% are American Indian or Alaskan Natives. Genetics does play a role. Let's talk about signs and symptoms, the things that we should be attentive to when it comes to diabetes. Frequent urination. When we're getting up several times a night to have to go to the bathroom, or when we just have a frequent urge that we have to go. Excessive thirst and hunger, the feeling that we just can't get enough to eat or drink throughout the day. Weight loss without trying. When we haven't done anything different to our diet and exercise program, yet we're losing pounds. Numbness or tingling in your hands and feet. Oftentimes, people describe this feeling as pins and needles in their hands and feet. The frequent feeling of being tired, just feeling exhausted all the time, even after we've gotten a good night's rest. Very dry skin. Often people say itchy skin because it's just so dry. Slow healing wounds or frequent infections. A lot of the time, diabetics have wounds on their feet that just don't ever seem to heal, or bruises that don't go away for weeks on end. These are some of the most obvious signs, but be mindful that things like new onset confusion is another symptom of your blood sugar being off. Dizziness, excessive sweating, and shakes or tremors. People often say they're jittery. That's also another sign. And lastly, being grumpy is a symptom. Many brush that one off because it sounds silly, but reality is if your cells aren't working properly and producing enough energy, this tends to leave people feeling irritable and grumpy. Interventions, things we could do to kick diabetes in the butt and lead healthier lifestyles. These may look easy and simple, but reality is they are time-consuming and super difficult. Let's start with our first one. Join a lifestyle change program. This is probably the hardest one for a lot of people. It involves making lasting lifestyle changes. These programs are often more difficult for people because the change is sudden instead of gradual, and people just have a hard time sticking to them. However, the CDC does partner with many public and private organizations to provide a national diabetes prevention program. This provides those who have diabetes or are in that pre-diabetic range to find affordable programs to improve their overall health. However, we can always start smaller and work our way into the change program. Doing something as simple as cutting back sugary drinks with the goal of eventually being completely rid of them is a big start. Make a nutrition plan for healthier eating. Do things like add more protein to your diet and healthy carbs such as sweet potatoes and vegetables instead of the French fries and hamburgers. Foods need to be tailored to your needs. So this is a perfect time to get an expert opinion. Talk to your physician about working with a registered dietitian if you're having trouble finding what's healthy and what's not. And the most important one is get active. Find something you enjoy doing. Walking, running, biking, maybe even a cardio class. If you're currently completely inactive, start small. 20 minutes a day for 3 days a week is the perfect place to start. And then progress. Eventually, we want to be at 30 minutes a day for at least 5 days a week. Make it a point to plan your workout. Set out the time in your daily or weekly schedule. This makes it easier to complete it, especially when you're just starting out. Then do it until it just becomes a habit, until it's second nature. Inactivity, excessive weight, and diabetes go hand in hand. We can lower blood sugar levels by exercising. Finding a balance and staying healthy is key. Lastly, I want to hand out this brochure to everyone. It discusses some of the things we went over today, talks about some information about being a type 2 diabetic. It has the risk factors that we went over, signs and symptoms, also complications. Diabetes leads to other things such as cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, and stroke. Goes into some prevention, just like we talked about. Healthier eating and getting moving are two of the biggest key ones. The most important part I want to point out from this brochure is the patient resources on the back. Your physician is one of your best resources, so definitely use them. But I've also attached some links, the CDC and the Diabetes Organization website. Both of those have really great information, and they have recipes and nutritional plans that can help you in leading a better and healthier lifestyle. Thank you guys so much for coming today.